It's time for the Steve and Kyle podcast with Kyle.
Fun fact regarding a retired player who needed a settlement for financial issues regarding a team.
That is an amazing story, though.
Oh, it's fantastic to hear.
Maybe we'll have a Bobby Bonilla episode.
You think so?
Yeah.
Can you tell me when so I could skip it?
And Steve.
So were you ready for Steve to go home as well?
Actually, no, but...
Oh, boy, that sounded like a yes.
Yes.
I think, and I don't know that should be offensive, right? I mean, everybody's always
No, of
kind of
course
itching
not.
for
Yeah.
stuff to be...
Yeah, why wouldn't it be offensive
You want it to
when
be
your
back
own
to normal.
flesh and blood says that they were ready for you to leave?
Now, here they are, two guys who are living in style, Steve and Kyle.
Test. 1, 2. Boy, history has been made today.
Look at this. For the first time in 3 years, we upgraded some equipment.
I think so. I
Well-
think maybe we upgraded a cable or two.
We need to be very forthcoming. We actually upgraded this equipment
6
4 months ago? 5 months ago?
I thought it was right after your surgery.
Boy, it may be. I mean, I can take a look at
The
when
old-
I
the
purchased
old-
the
old
mixer.
eBay receipt.
Yeah, because I remember you and I talking about it, and then I happened to find a super affordable listing for what
A very
it
good
was
deal.
we were looking
Yeah,
for.
great deal on it.
The trigger was pulled on like a. This was March 11. I bought that.
Okay. All right. So yeah,
So it's been
4
3 months.
3 months.
4 months. Yeah, boy. You've spent a good amount of time honing in on
In the last week, yeah.
what we need to do.
Mostly yesterday. Yesterday was the day that I kind of had
Right.
set aside. I was like, all right, I get home from work Friday afternoon. Evelyn's going to be down for a nap. Annette had a chiropractor appointment and a couple of errands to run. I was like, this will be nice. I'll have a good hour to kind of sit down in the lab,
Yeah.
turning knobs,
Yeah.
getting my Dan Shike on. And
Did you invoice anybody?
hey, we're just going to start that over again from the top.
Apparently the sound pad's on loop.
Couple little issues to work out still. I swear, yesterday, by the time I was done working on it, I had I got everything kind of set up, but it's set up like temporarily because inevitably we're gonna have to switch things up, move things around
Yeah.
or something. But I was like, in this mixer, I know it inside and out. And then we started 15 minutes ago trying to record, and it was like, I wonder what this button does.
Yeah, it's been about 35 minutes, and it should come as no surprise that there were I can't call it a litany, just because there wasn't, it was one issue that, it's the mixer, and that we're trying to figure out. So it should come as no surprise, though, that there are these issues, tech-wise, with this show, because
it's kind of what we do.
We have been plagued by them. And again, there's 2 college degrees and a person who works in radio here full time, which makes it all the more remarkable, Steve.
Yeah,
that we still somehow
college degree. I would never brag at all about my college degree.
It doesn't matter,
no,
right?
I'm not I'm not in like higher education or anything like that. My degree is completely useless.
Yeah,
like it's one thing if I had a math degree or a history degree, because those aren't really changing a whole lot.
Yeah.
But what I learned in college 20-something years ago is completely irrelevant now.
I don't remember most of it.
Well, I remember, just the basics of learning audio editing. I learned on this machine called the Orban Odyssey, which was a big computer. It was, surprisingly, it was digital. This is like the first form of digital editing. Like, it wasn't old tape and razor blades and wax pencils and stuff. This was like, I never learned any of that. I was like a year past that.
Got
2 years past
you were
that.
in the new age.
Yeah, the new school. So I learned on this thing that just had like a big wheel on it that you would spin, so you move the cursor back and forth, and then setting edit points like edit in, edit out, cut, swap. And it was, I mean, it's the Stone Age compared to what we do now, where it's all just, I have a mouse and a trackpad, and I do everything I need to do. But
my very first internship in college, and this wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was 11 to 12 years ago. It was at a TV station in town, and they had there was tape to tape editing.
Oh yeah,
for at the news station for sports highlights. So you were cutting the tape and mixing them together. It was a total disaster.
Yeah.
A total nightmare to do in 2010. That was happening, not exactly the late 90s.
Basically, long story long, what we're saying is if things sound a little bit different for the next couple of weeks, I don't think they're going to sound that much different. To us, they will. But yeah, it's just kind of some growing pains. We're figuring out exactly what we're doing with this new equipment. But I think it's definitely going to streamline things, as hopefully we'll be able to tell in the next couple of minutes when we have a guest on.
God, that menace Shike is probably sitting at home going, "Ooh, the mid's a little bit off."
Did you see Shike posted a picture? Dan Shike, big fan of this podcast. The feeling is not reciprocated.
No, God Almighty, just stealing money from poor musicians constantly to go turn some knobs.
Posted a picture of some award that he won.
No, I didn't see
plaque
that
got sent in the mail to him.
We should talk to Shike again.
We should
soon.
we still need a plaquist. We should come up with a plaque and send it to him. It just says, "You suck."
We still need to get the one made for Hartford City.
Yeah,
I mean,
something. We know a guy. We Cy Nolan Ryan Young. He's got his computer wood machine.
He's got his computer robot thing.
Yeah, it spits out.
That could rig us up a plaque, right?
Spits out all kinds of stuff.
There's no reason he couldn't do a plaque for us, right?
I see no reason at all.
Again, I still think we make the drive to Hartford City. We open a window near the childhood home of C.G. Johnson,
the inventor of the overhead garage door.
We whip it out the passenger window, and we're on our way.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. But speaking of what we were just talking about, we have a guest coming up on the podcast.
Yeah. So the reason that we decided to and not just get off the pot was because we needed this new equipment in place for the interviews that we have booked over the next few weeks.
I mean, we didn't technically because, like, we've talked to plenty of people in the past.
Right.
We talked to my brother last week, and it probably sounded okay, but the way that we were doing it on our end was just, it was like we had to lean in and talk into the computer, but also talk into our mics because there were just, look, we could talk to you about how our mixer wasn't set up for a mix minus.
Yes.
But I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, it's the minutia that doesn't matter. All we know is that now we can talk into our microphones. The person on the end of the phone will hear us through our microphones, which is very important.
Yeah, they won't hear themselves back. They won't hear echoes and weirdness. It'll sound like any other phone call.
Yeah, so today is the first of 3 weeks in a row, Steve.
Whew.
I gave you homework.
You did.
I gave you homework so we wouldn't be, mostly so we wouldn't just be embarrassed and you wouldn't be in the background going, yeah, that sounds neat.
Please tell me you're a little bit impressed with the amount of ground.
I'm impressed that you listened to all 5 episodes.
I listened to 5 episodes of a podcast yesterday.
It's about 40 minutes apiece, so you're at about about 3 hours or so.
And it worked out perfectly because I had a little bit of time in the car yesterday, so I was like, "Oh, this is perfect." I had kind of been bookmarking that for yesterday, and I didn't listen to it because I mean, obviously I want to be prepared for this person that we're going to talk to in a few minutes, but I started listening and I was like, "Okay, episode 1, all right." You got my interest. Episode 2. All right. You got my interest a little bit more. I think it was episode 3, though, that I was like, okay, now where do I need to drive for the next 40 minutes? Because I really want to listen to this. And I probably should have waited till we had Ben on the line to tell him that. And so I may end up restating that exact thing.
I'm sure he would appreciate it. So, today we're going to talk to Ben Kubrick, who is the host of the podcast Algorithm. Now, Algorithm is interesting, Steve, and I'm glad I was able to get you on board to listen to all of it because this isn't just your regular true crime type of podcast. He has, I don't know if he's a mathematician, but he has somebody on who created an algorithm years ago that
Like 2010. I
yes,
think, right?
that was supposed to be helpful or somewhat predictive in terms of serial killer and serial murder bubbles that were happening in areas.
Yeah.
And he ties it into a murder case in Gary, Indiana in 2014 that this algorithm may have helped prevent.
Yeah, if you were a fan of the TV show Mindhunter, this will probably feel very familiar. It's basically because Mindhunter talked about when the FBI was first coming up with the idea of a serial killer.
Yeah.
They just didn't think that existed, and they basically used clues to figure out, oh, well, there are people out there that kill repeatedly.
Sure.
And maybe always have a specific calling card, something that they always do, or a place that they always leave the body, or a particular way that the victims are killed. And it's super interesting that they were able to come up with an algorithm to actually predict or link these murders.
It's a fascinating look into a micro and a macro situation, how you get the details of a murder case, a horrible, horrible case of a young woman strangled and murdered in Gary, Indiana in 2014, and how it relates to the macro in terms of this algorithm, as well as overall policing in today's day and age. So I'm excited to talk to Ben.
Yeah, let's get Ben on.
Hey.
Hey, is this Ben?
Yes, this is. How's it going?
Very good, Ben. It's the Steve and Kyle podcast. How are you this morning?
Good.
Good.
I'm just looking for a headphone connector.
Jesus, Ben, come on, man.
I thought you were a professional,
what are you
Ben.
doing? We even called a minute late. Jeez.
Yeah.
So are you sitting at home right now listening to us on a speakerphone?
No, I don't have you on speaker, so I'm surprised I can actually hear you, because often I just have it on speaker and still hold it up right next to my ear. That move.
Now, is this extra embarrassing for you as a man of public radio background? You know, being unprepared and not having the audio equipment you need has to be just a shameful moment for you.
Never run into that before. Do you know the thing I'm talking about? It's like that little white connector.
Oh, that's called the dongle.
Yeah,
it's called the dongle.
Yeah,
you need the dongle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whereabout are you, Ben? Where are you located?
So I am in Atlanta.
Okay.
Nice. Were you born and raised there, or is that just where you are now?
I wasn't. Yeah, it's where I am now. So I was born, I guess, in Washington, D.C. and raised in Northern Virginia. And I guess I moved down here originally for grad school. Ended up dropping out of that, but liking the city. So now. We've both listened to all, I think it's 5 episodes of the podcast so far.
Yeah.
The podcast is Algorithm, iHeartRadio, or wherever you find podcasts, you can find it. So seeing as how you're in Atlanta, did the history of the Atlanta child murders, did that kind of spark your interest in the kind of podcast that you wanted to do, or is it just a coincidence?
So it's kind of the path that got me into true crime and kind of got me hired at iHeartMedia. I guess it was still Stuff Media or How Stuff Works when I joined a couple years ago, but it was following the success of Atlanta Monster. They wanted to kind of make a sequel to that, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Payne Lindsay, who did, he was the voice of and did a lot of the work on Atlanta Monster. He has this other podcast, Up and Vanish, that he needed to kind of step away and work on that. So they hired a few of us producers kind of as ringers to come in and make the show Monster the Zodiac Killer.
Okay.
So there is this connection there. And then it's actually funny, when I first started looking up the algorithm, one of the things that caught my eye was that Hargrove's algorithm did identify these large clusters in Atlanta. And so that was actually when I pitched the show. I was kind of planning on doing it about the Atlanta clusters, but then I realized that, there's this interesting story about how did this algorithm get made in the first place, and kind of, he cites the arrest of Vaughn as kind of like the proof of principle that this thing works.
So to kind of reset the podcast algorithm, you have new episodes on Tuesdays, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it basically it is the story. It starts out as the story of a woman named Africa Hardy who was murdered in Gary, Indiana in 2014, and then kind of backtracks from there to the early to mid 2000s, where a gentleman came up with an algorithm that he hoped would eventually be able to not just link serial murders, but also predict, or at least be able to give a good idea of if there was a serial killer in a certain area. It's mind-blowing to think of the work that went into this, to coming up with an algorithm. I have no idea how that would. I wouldn't have any clue how to begin doing that. But to me, one of the shocking things was that when you boil it all down, it's math that's kind of solving all of these things. It's a computer program that's doing math and figuring out where possible murders could take place, or linking possible past murders.
Yeah, and it's not even really that sophisticated of math either. It's basically just looking at, are there a large number of unsolved similar murders? And the idea kind of being that, if, regular murders are harder to solve than these serial murders because, like, this person is getting away with them, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they can keep doing them. So if you see kind of like a certain type of person getting killed in a certain way, and these cases aren't being solved, then that's kind of a red flag that there could be a serial killer in that area.
Now, apologies for jumping back and forth a little bit, but you said you started
Sure.
graduate school. At what point did you think that podcasting and producing podcasts, hosting and investigating was something viable, that, hey, I'm fascinated by this. This is something I could see myself doing?
Yeah. So I definitely had a weird path. I was going down kind of the science and medicine track. I guess it was maybe I graduated college in 2010, and I got a job working in a lab, and I was just like moving mice from one cage to another. I was kind of down in this like basement room, and I'd also, it was like my first job, got a smartphone, and discovered these things called podcasts, and that really helped pass for like 4 hours straight of smelling mouse and whatever.
Well, I mean, I need to let you know, though, that the very start of that, you, a college graduate, tucked into a basement, too smart for your own good, moving mice. That sounds like the origin of a supervillain.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Like you end up doing experiments on yourself because you're so bored.
Yeah.
Or one of the mice bites you.
Yes, and now you're Mouse
And
Man.
yeah, now you're Mouse Man, and you have superpowers.
Well, I mean, I hate to break it to you guys, but
It didn't pan out that way.
It's
big-
not as
big-
exciting as we make it sound.
well, no, I was going to say there's a big twist coming at the end of this podcast. And,
That's right.
Yeah, wait till Tuesday's episode.
Yeah, no kidding. So what is it, Ben? Because you said you started looking at the Atlanta clusters in terms of this algorithm. What is it that drew you to the case of Africa Hardy specifically, and the Gary cluster that really caught your eye?
Well, so it's kind of like, I guess the algorithm sounds so crazy, right? So it's like, does this thing really work? And Hargrove always, he cites this thing of having sent this letter to Gary in 2010, telling them he thought that they had a serial killer who was strangling young women. He even mentioned the abandoned building parts, that there were a number found in or around abandoned buildings. And then that's basically exactly what they found.
That was so shocking that he was able to get that much detail out of that algorithm, where he was able to send a letter to them saying, hey, this is what you got on your hands, and if you don't watch out for it, it's going to happen again. And like you said, it was like crickets on their end. They just didn't reply.
Yeah, and he did end up kind of getting through to the coroners, and the coroners kind of looked into it, but one of the things with these kinds of investigations is that when something is an open case, that kind of makes it this privileged information that most government documents, you can make these Freedom of Information Act requests and kind of check, what the government is doing and stuff like that. But with open cases, so if they haven't, convicted someone for something, or it doesn't go to court, you just can't get that access to that information. So it looks like they did look into it a little bit, but it's really hard to know kind of to what extent they actually took it seriously.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I can understand why they wouldn't want to reply and give you a ton of information, but
sure. To a random person.
Sure, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. You can figure out how your murders are doing.
But but you spoke to Hargrove at length about this algorithm and about his communications with the police departments. Was there any animosity there that they, one, never got back to him, and two, it seems like murders continued happening?
Yeah. There's, so there's going to be some twists coming still. So I don't want to give away too much, but I think it ends up being a more complicated story. So I guess one thing, just to have a spoilers a little bit. So the killer that they ended up arresting for Africa Hardy's murder, who then confessed to a number of other murders, he was actually in prison for, I think, 5 years, kind of shortly after Hargrove sent this letter. So just going back to that point of the kind of murders continuing, there actually might have been this period there where if this guy was responsible for these, that they stopped. And there's some other things like that I think, might play a factor. I'd mentioned the thing about abandoned homes before. And it's just also, if you just look at Gary, there's a lot of abandoned homes.
Yeah.
So I think it is definitely very clear that the algorithm picked up on the fact that like something unusual was happening. And whether that was this particular guy as a serial killer, if there's another serial killer out there, or if it's just, a place where there were a lot of kind of crimes happening that weren't getting solved. I think some of that is still kind of ambiguous.
I'm glad you mentioned, you're in Atlanta. These all happen in Gary. So I feel like that opens the window for me to complain to you about my most hated trope for true crime podcasts. And listen, we're 5 episodes in. I don't have any inkling that you're going to do this. But is there any part of you that when you listen, because you're a seasoned podcast listener, a grizzled vet, Ben.
Yeah.
When you hear a car door open and leaves start crunching under feet, and then a knock on the door and a voiceover along the lines of, I had to go back to where it happened.
And then you hear the door opens.
Yes.
Hi, I'm so-and-so from the so-and-so podcast. Can I talk to you about the murders? And then, I don't want to talk about that. Bam! Door slam.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Why is there this need? Now, you've produced, and now, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first hosting, producing, research job that you're kind of doing, not all-inclusive. I'm not minimizing anything of your team that's helping, but this is your first hosting gig, really. And
yeah.
Has that struck you? Have you thought about going back and doing one of those scenes?
I mean, if it weren't for the pandemic, I mean, that probably would have happened.
Oh, no, sure, Ben, blame it on the pandemic. Everything's the fault of the pandemic.
So what you're telling me is that Ben Kubrick's next podcast, we can almost be guaranteed an end of an episode teaser with the car door, the crunching leaves, and you saying, that's next time on such and such.
I mean, so there's still a little bit of a possibility that it'll happen this season. I haven't gone up there yet, but I talk kind of off the record with Sean Ford about this stuff. I couldn't get kind of an interview with him for the podcast, unfortunately. But he's really encouraged me to kind of just go up there and see it. And when I was working at an NPR station, I was kind of working out in western Kansas, and it's one of these regions where there's kind of, there's the tension between the big national journalist who kind of like parachutes in and does their quick story and gets a bunch of stuff like kind of half wrong, where it's really not that big of a deal, but as like the local reporter, you're like, they don't know anything.
Yeah, they
don't care enough.
They pronounce the town name a little bit wrong, or don't go to the diner that everyone else goes to.
And so there's definitely like the artifice of artifice. I never know how to pronounce that word.
Sounds good. Both ways sound good.
Of making the, setting up the scene and going out to the place, and it always feels like you're kind of backwards justifying it.
Yeah.
Because really you just want that tape of being there in person. But there's something to be said for actually being there in person and seeing this stuff for yourself too.
I'm happy that you brought up that you've talked to obviously many people off the record. How frustrating is it when you have a piece of information that was given to you off the record that you can't present? Like it could be, the missing link that you need, or the missing link that a listener would need to connect dots.
Yeah, well, I never get anything that good.
So they're not coming to you with everything?
Yeah, I haven't run into that really yet, of like, getting some juicy leak that I need to figure out some way to put in there. But it's more just like, I think one of the things I love about this podcast is or not this podcast, but podcasts in general, is just like hearing the actual people's voices. And I feel like you can just kind of get a sense for what kind of characters people are.
Oh boy, yeah. One in particular.
Yeah.
One in particular.
Now,
are you saying Vaughn? Or?
Yeah, that would be the one.
There was a tease, and I believe it was at the end of episode 3 that you did, and I'm not giving anything away, but it like raised the hair on my arms at the end when you mentioned the death march coming, and that is such a terminology to use that I don't understand, and maybe it was, and it just totally missed my ears and eyes. I don't understand how this wasn't a large form national story.
Yeah, I think it was for like 3 or 4 days. Man. But then, I don't know if just some other story came along, or
the news cycle just regurgitated or whatever.
Yeah, and then I think kind of really then what happened with this story, and I kind of got lucky about it when I stumbled upon it, was that then it had this very protracted trial where, like a lawyer left and they had to hire a new lawyer, and it switched judges. And, I guess I should put this in the podcast. I haven't written out an episode about that. That might be a bonus at the end. But then because of that, there was this gag order that got put in place, actually still in place, which I don't completely understand.
Yeah, that's very strange. I just listened to that yesterday.
But because of that, then I think kind of by the time anyone could get more information about it, no one even remembered this thing anymore. And then kind of I found out about it shortly after the time period where you could make a records request and get access to this stuff. So.
We're talking to Ben Kubrick, host of Algorithm, new episodes everywhere you can get your podcasts on Tuesdays. Ben, we mentioned and you told us about how you'd been listening to podcasts for a long time. It would help you move mice from one cage to another. How important was it for you to do something, I guess, a little different in terms of the true crime genre? I'm not saying true crime podcasts are run of the mill or anything like that, but this one obviously has a bit of a twist on it when you talk about the actual algorithm.
Yeah. So I was kind of, my original plan was to do science journalism, and that was kind of an appeal for this, was, this story that, was kind of about data and seeing these invisible patterns and, and people not listening to them. And I didn't make this connection when I started working about it, but in retrospect, I wonder if there was something kind of subconscious going on where, I started doing a lot of the work on this in the early days of COVID. And that was kind of the same thing about these people shouting about numbers and graphs and whatever, and kind of no one listening, and a lot of bad stuff happening as a result of that. So I think that was kind of a factor. And early on, I did want to. I think I've kind of, as it evolved, and I got access to some of this stuff, like these interviews with Darren Vaughn. Then it started evolving into more of a, maybe the typical true crime documentary. But I think by the end of the season, we're kind of going to loop back to the algorithm and kind of maybe this bigger picture of policing and kind of what policing looks like now and what it could look like if we kind of took more of a data-centered approach.
Mm-hmm. When you did get the access, because you say in the podcast that you submitted whatever the Indiana version of the Freedom of Information request was, you said you submitted that request, and then, what was it, months later, you just got an email that said, here you go, and it was a link to a Google Drive with something absurd like 45 gigs worth of data or something like that.
Yeah.
So when you start combing through that and you realize, oh crap, this is the guy, this is the one that they arrested, talking in extreme detail about these murders, these incidents. I mean, does that take a toll on you? I would imagine mentally it would be tough to sit there and listen to all of this for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, I guess I've been working in true crime now for 2 years. I'm kind of somewhat desensitized from that. I think I've always, like I was saying, I was working on mice and stuff like that. I've done stuff as a scientist, and then actually I was saying grad school before, but I applied to, or I was in an MD PhD program for a while and dropped out. So, I did anatomy where you're cutting open cadavers. And, I guess throughout my adult life, I think I've been exposed to a lot of stuff like that. But when I got that stuff, one of the things I got with it was a lot of the autopsy pictures from this case. And, I was just going through kind of taking, just seeing what they had sent me. And, I just clicked on an image file, and then all of a sudden this thing like pops up and fills the screen. And, I just was not prepared for that.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Now,
and so anyway, there's stuff like that where I think you get desensitized and you're just kind of doing your job, and then something will happen, and then
Yeah.
you just have to be like, oh yeah, this is weird, and I need to take a break for a little bit.
Yeah, the one part in particular that really jumped out at me was when I think Hargrove said that once the algorithm was running, he was kind of he said he was grouping the victims, and he referred to it as grouping them in buckets. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, that seems very insensitive of family members listening. But then, I mean, the more I thought about it, he's doing his work. To him, I mean, he's not emotionally invested because he doesn't know these people. He's emotionally invested because it's his work, and that he's able to compartmentalize and he's desensitized to it. But I remember thinking, buckets, boy, God, he couldn't have come up with a better word than bucket. He couldn't have just said groups.
Yeah, I didn't even track that one. I don't know. I guess that's how desensitized
we got 5 victims in that bucket and 6 over in that bucket.
Boy, and but
kind of like it's Bear Brook. Did you ever listen to that one?
Yes, I did. You
know, as soon as you said victims and buckets, that's where my head goes.
Victims found in literal pails, and oh boy, yeah, that is a weird analogy that is now in my brain. Now, Ben, you talked to a bunch of people. You said on the record, off the record. How do you prepare yourself to talk to family, friends, associates of somebody who has been murdered?
Yeah. You know, so I think for me, it starts with, you know, the process of reaching out to them. And, you know, usually that's basically starting with an apology for bothering them.
Yeah.
You know, telling them who I am, my background, what I'm doing, and depending on the stage, you know. So I think when I reached out to Africa's Mom, it was kind of more still at, this is this project that I'm interested in doing. And then kind of once you've invested a certain amount of time and it's been greenlit, then it's kind of more like, hey, this thing is happening. I want you to be aware it's happening. I would love to hear your story. I want to make sure I get everything right that I can possibly get right. But totally understand if you want to move on. And it's interesting. I think I've found it's a lot easier to get buy-in from relatives of victims than, for example, like relatives of the perpetrators and stuff like that.
Sure, they're the ones who want to move on.
Yeah. The victims, you know, they want to memorialize this person that they lost and kind of share the story of how this thing has affected them. And I think the people related to the perpetrators are much more worried about being kind of blamed or demonized or something like that. So.
Well, kudos to you, because you know there's a lot of audio of you talking to Africa's mother, and I don't believe this is a spoiler. It's a main core detail of what happened. Africa was working as a sex worker, and her mom found out when she was murdered. So that's not something on a mother's side that's very easy to want to talk about or be willing to talk about, but she seemed pretty forthcoming with you, and I think that's credit to both sides for that.
Yeah, and actually, so she was pretty. One of the things when I was doing the initial research and deciding whether to produce this as a story was watching this this interview that she did on national TV, kind of a couple of days after this happened, and you know. I think the national TV is really leaning into this sensationalism of this whole thing. And she kind of held her own and, you know, said she didn't know that this was going on. And she was sad that her daughter felt she had to do this, but, you know, that it didn't justify her murder or the murder of any of these other women.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, I really hope that she'll speak to me, because I was very impressed by her.
Now, before we let you go, Ben, I have to imagine you're not going to know what to do with yourself the next time you create the next podcast you create, whatever it is, whatever's percolating in your mind, because you've done this one throughout the majority of a pandemic, limiting everything you can do, whether it's travel, face-to-face interviews, visiting certain things. So the next one you do, you're going to have so much time on your hands because you're going to be able to do everything you want to do from day one.
Does that give me more time on my hands, or does that mean I'm going to be busier?
Well, it'll make it easier for you, right? I mean,
yeah, a little bit.
I hope so. Yeah, there was a lot going on over this last year, but there was a lot of time to kind of sit around and do something like this too. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm looking forward to, definitely like the possibility of going somewhere in person, doing more in-person interviews. And I'm kind of hoping that, the algorithm can continue and maybe, something like the Atlanta clusters, or I'm hoping at the end of the season to kind of call out to people because the algorithm is available online. You can go to, I think it's murderdata.org. It's a little counterintuitive, but you can look up your own zip code, see if there's anything there.
Oh, cool. That sounds like a blast. Hey, are there any serial killers in my neighborhood?
Yeah.
But I'm kind of, I am kind of hoping that maybe, that this podcast can turn into a series where people uncover weird things going on in their areas that are worth looking into and investigating, and we can make a big franchise out of it. And iHeartMedia will probably own all the IP and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you'll get nothing.
Again, you're a cog in the machine, Ben. I'm glad you understand that.
Well, Ben, we could not thank you enough for joining us. We really enjoyed the podcast. Again, the podcast is called Algorithm. It is available wherever you get podcasts on Tuesdays. How many more episodes can we look forward to in this season?
At least 7.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay,
very
great.
nice.
Very nice.
People get caught up now. It is honestly some of these episodes, like Steve, you were describing to me before we even started recording with Ben, that how you listened to the first few episodes and then you said, okay, well now I need to figure out a way to drive another 40 minutes so I can listen to the next episode.
Yeah, it was
awesome.
Episode 1, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Episode 2, yep, this is still interesting. And then episode 3, I was like, okay, so I guess I could plan a trip across the state for no reason just so I can listen for a couple more hours. I mean, my family doesn't need me at home. I got to listen to murder mysteries.
Yeah, well, I really do appreciate that, and this has been a ton of fun. I was kind of nervous at first, but you guys are very easy to talk to.
Yeah,
no,
Ben,
listen,
we are the least professional people you'll ever speak to.
Honestly, we'd love to check in with you again, maybe towards the end of the season if you're okay with that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Sounds
great.
good. Thanks
Ben,
a bunch,
thanks
Ben.
a lot, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a good one.
See you.
Bye.
Ben Kubrick from the podcast Algorithm again. Wherever you get podcasts.
Yeah. Still
it's produced by iHeartMedia.
Yep. It's so weird because there's podcast companies that produce all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And outside, I know most of the money comes from the ads and whatever.
Yeah.
So
what do we know? We know nothing about where the money comes from in
no,
podcasts.
that's a good point. Yeah, we know where the money goes from podcasting.
Speaking of which, I got a $5 check from Billy Stacks.
Oh, Billy, you coming through. It's just like clockwork, and we love it. The bank's got to hate him.
Yeah, suck on that, Ben, if you're listening. We got $5 this month.
Yeah, we got a listener paying us $5. We don't even have a Patreon. They're not taking a cut. That's a physical check that comes this way.
$250 for me, $250 for Kyle.
I mean, should we become part of a big network? Like, I'm assuming we just call iHeart and say, hey, you guys want this?
We're signing up. Get us on. When's the money start?
And then they drop in ads or do whatever they need to do, you know, from the big listenership they get from episode 270 of the Steve and Kyle podcast. No, that was a lot of fun. I again, that is the first of kind of 3 in a row. Next week we have another kind of a mystery. I guess I could call it true crime. Host coming up next week, and then a bit of a different one coming up the week after that we can talk a little bit more about next week. I don't want I'm in a weird stage where I don't want to say who they are, because then if we get to the day of and for whatever reason
it doesn't work
they
out,
can't do it, and then well, hey, why did you bail on so and so? And I don't think that'll happen, but I'd rather just leave it. I'm not being vague.
Our audience is very respectful.
I'm not being vague to just drag people along, but then we're going to have an appearance on Brian and Chrissy's podcast, The Commercial Break, coming up later this month.
Yeah, when is that?
As well, we're supposed to be recording that in a couple of weeks.
Yes,
so we'll be doing that.
That'll be fun.
Boy, it's weird to have to bring it back from talking about a serial murderer. And I thought about, I wanted to ask him, are you sure you really want to travel to Gary in the summer? Like, I know the.
Are you sure? No.
Or ever?
Just trust us. Don't go there. Ben, if you're still listening, there's nothing there to see. I mean, I'm sure that you could talk to some people.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing the pandemic has taught us, you got Zoom. You can do that over the phone.
Yeah.
You can do whatever, Skype, whatever you want. FaceTime. You don't need to go to Gary.
My takeaway from all of that we just talked about with Ben is we're living in this new weird generation where everybody talks constantly about print media and everything is dying, right? By the droves.
Yeah.
It's going away. Is this going to be the new outlet for all of those kind of journalists per se, or researchers to be able to do what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree with the whole print media thing is going away. I mean, obviously,
the herd's been thinned, right?
It's moving digital. It's going online, and it's still there though. By the way, your cup has dripped every single time.
I don't understand where it's coming. I took the lid off mid-interview, Steve.
Every single time you have taken a sip, you've gotten at least 10 drops.
Mid-interview, I took the lid off because it kept dripping, because I was like, oh, it must be the lid. No, it must actually be the cup. I'm trying like different sides. Like I'll drink out of this side, and it's still dripping.
Maybe you just need a straw.
I don't want to kill the oceans.
But yeah, I think that I've always been from the belief that if there's an interesting story to tell, there's going to be an audience for it, no matter what form it's in, whether it's print, whether it's podcast or audio, different audio forms or video forms.
Yeah. Now that does feel a little bit weird coming from you, being the heavy foot that crushes the mom and pop shows around the country. Johnny the Duck, still out of work.
Remember when I said interesting story to tell?
It's very true.
No offense, Johnny.
Or Lisa. Well,
or
Lisa can be offended.
Well, no, she didn't get her offense in
that's right. She
before
didn't,
I said
that's
no
a good
offense.
Point.
So
I guess that brings up a good question for me, because you guys move into new radio stations. It happens everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You're not the only show doing it. I know we joke about that, but it's important to say this isn't a side gig thing. This happens everywhere.
Also important to note, we don't seek out a station and say we want to be on KQL.
Right.
Go get them. And, send our goons there to beat up the current show.
You're not running prohibition like whiskey gangs back in the 30s.
We are contacted.
Yeah.
In most cases, we are contacted. And it's not even us. It's another entity,
a company
is
that
contacted.
handles you.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever gotten a message or any feedback from a show you replaced? Not the station that you took over, because we don't need to recap some of the ones that went sideways. Cincinnati looking at you.
But Cincinnati's looking great right now compared to some of the ones that we've done.
Really?
Yeah.
See, those are fascinating stories that aren't meant for this podcast and not meant for air. But
again, these are stations that seek us out.
Yeah.
We gladly say, yes, we'll be on your radio station. Sure. And then they get mad at us. And then they fire us for doing
the exact same thing.
What they sought us out to do.
It's remarkable that there's stations and audiences out there who think, boy, this is so different, and you guys changed when we brought you on here.
Yeah.
It's like, no, not really. I mean, everything evolves. I don't know that you can necessarily say it changed, but I've always been fascinated by that idea that somebody, a Johnny the Duck, has sent an angry email after the fact saying, you jerks replaced me.
I'm sure it's happened. I can't think of one off the top of my head, though.
Yeah, you probably have the. I mean, I could see your cohorts having the poor person filters on their email.
Yeah,
You know, the unemployed filters.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they all get filtered to me.
You get all the anger.
Yeah. No, I know that we have spoken to people like years later where they said, "Oh yeah, you guys replaced me, but it was fine." Like there was one person in particular where he said, "Yeah, I was terrible. It wasn't working out." And in hindsight, it's good that it happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that we've ever spoken to somebody like right after the fact.
Because that would be, I mean, that would be your typical, like, I'm angry, I just got fired moment. And then they'd be like, wow, these guys, I can't believe they came in here and said, you know, Johnny the Duck sucked.
No,
and they got me fired.
No, because I think that in most cases, the people that we replace, they're aware. They know how the industry works.
Sure.
They know that it wasn't us that said we want to replace Johnny the Duck. Mm-hmm. It's just Johnny the Duck was on his way out, and it was like it was either going to be us or somebody else.
Right? Yeah. If the asking price or the negotiation didn't go the way it needed to go for you guys, it would have gone the way it needed for the next guys.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
It wasn't going to be. Wasn't going to stay the Johnny the Duck and so show.
No.
No, that was fun. I enjoyed. Listen,
yeah, it was good.
I enjoy talking to new people, different people, and talking about what they do, and that's kind of why I thought, hey, let's bring in some different people around here and talk to them a little bit. And as you heard, the Adventures of Mouse Man coming very soon.
I will say that on the podcast algorithm, Ben plays it straight.
Yes,
I mean he is a serious guy.
Well, you heard him. He has a background in NPR.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and that as soon as I started listening to it, I said he either works for an NPR station or he's heavily influenced
by NPR
and listens to a lot of NPR, Radio Lab, things like that. Because that's a very specific delivery. If you've ever listened to NPR, you know exactly what we're talking about. It's the steady pace, the pregnant pauses, the time to let things kind of sink in.
Yeah.
It's not just nonstop.
I say we ask him about that next time we have him on, because I think it'd be neat to check in with him towards the end of the season. Because listen, I wrote down some questions we didn't get to, but that's the way it tends to go on not just this podcast.
I mean, we'll talk to him again when he has us on, right?
Yeah, you and I would definitely fit on that podcast because, one, we're super involved near Gary.
I mean, we're close enough to Gary. We could be his eye. We could be
the
ears on the
ground. Yes, he pays us to go to Gary.
Look at that,
and we'll record all the foot crunching steps and the car doors closing.
They call that nat sound in the industry.
Right. We'll record so much B-roll sound. That's all we'll send him. Like wind blowing through trees, creaking doors opening.
Like me chewing potato chips. I don't know. You might need them, Ben.
Yes.
You might need them.
Scraping feet on a cement floor. And like a lonely swing at a playground.
Yeah.
We're not making a horror podcast. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. That's what this is.
I think it'd be neat to talk to him again at the end of the year and ask him a little bit more, because as these things go, and listen, we've seen it, and your radio show has seen it too. As many people as you say, oh man, I love it, I love it, I love it. Every person, and in Ben's case in particular, where this is his first foray into being the front face of this, internet hate isn't meant for everybody.
No.
Some people take it harder than others. It's worse on some others. Mm-hmm. So I'd be fascinated to talk to him about that as well. As well as, his NPR background, and did they tell him you need to make people fall asleep when you're talking on NPR?
Yeah.
Like that's the goal.
Right, yeah.
We're go to bed sound.
Yeah, exactly. Their big show is called Fresh Air.
Now that you mention it, the NPR program Nat Sound sounds like something that would happen.
Today on Nat Sound.
That'll be on the poll as well. We got a couple polls this week, and we'll recap last week's polls. But does it sound like Nat Sound? Or does Nat Sound seem like it should be aired on NPR?
Do you want to get to the polls from last week?
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Time to see how wrong everyone else is. It's poll recap time. Find the polls at Steve and Kyle on Facebook, Twitter, and
Hey!
Instagram.
Oh boy, did we get Melissa Vaughn to go back into the lab?
We called her back.
No,
said,
we
Melissa,
didn't.
we need 3 words.
No, sir. I went into this lab here and did a little editing and made her say other things. Worked out well.
That's right. Going back to last week. Oh, boy. It's always like a mini time
I
capsule,
feel like
Steve.
I got beat up a lot last week.
No, you just took it too hard. I mean... Sure, did Brother Mike say he was ready for you to go home almost immediately?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said that.
That's not his fault.
He said that.
Maybe look inward.
That's weird.
Do you always stop by your childhood home if you are nearby?
I had peeked at these results the other day, and it seemed like it was trending yes.
Yeah, it looks like about... Hang on, I'm sorry. I'm combining the results in my brain as we speak. 58% of the audience said yes.
Okay.
Is there a big Havana in Cuba?
Because there's Havana, there's Little Havana,
Yes.
so there's got to be a big Havana.
Where does little come from? Because there's a Chinatown and a ton of city, but it's not like Little China.
Yeah, I don't know.
So why is it Big Havana, Little Italy?
Yeah. I don't know. These are mysteries that can only be solved on history
Of the mystery. 74% of the audience said yes. There is
Yeah.
a big. Maybe we sell that to iHeart.
History of the mystery?
Yeah, because how easy.
It's like
Again, we're not solving anything.
It'll
We're
have
giving
like
you the background of mysteries, and then, all right, talk to you next
we'll
week.
have a 30-second intro with various clips of us talking the Kennedy assassination, man on the moon, the whatever, something else. I don't know. Name another conspiracy.
Pearl Harbor,
Great Pearl Harbor conspiracy.
Amelia Earhart, who was the subject of an at-length conversation before we turned the mics on.
Yeah.
A
And
pretty
the recipient of
quite
a nickname, Amelia Fair. God, Jesus, I messed it up again.
It's okay. We got editing issue. We can edit all that, Steve.
Okay.
Amelia Earhart, the conversation or the topic of quite a conversation before we even opened the mics today.
Yeah, and the recipient of the nickname Amelia Failheart. Woo! 3rd time's a charm.
Yeah, I don't know why, but both Amelia Earhart and Charles Lindbergh were the brunt of quite a beat up from me.
We were convinced that there was some overlap in those stories.
Yeah, so apologize we didn't bring that funny to the podcast this week. So pencil that in for the A bit next week, Steve, if you could. Lindbergh and Earhart talk.
You mean Failheart?
That's right. I can't believe I screwed that up. Are you always ready to go home before vacation is over?
I think that's a really common feeling.
This is closer than I thought. 49% of the audience said yes. 51% of the audience said no.
I would have thought that the majority would have said yes on that. By a significant amount. I would have thought 60, 70%.
You and I flew to Boston for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to go home at 7.
What was the last thing we did there?
The
Was it
brewery
the
tour.
brewery tour. Yeah, I wasn't really feeling that towards the end.
It was so
I enjoyed it,
fascinating.
but,
and
yeah.
the tasting room was so neat. We had eaten way too much during the
so
day.
Much. I barfed on the way
You
home.
barfed on the way home.
ate so much.
Are wallet photos still a thing? I think you can still order those. Like if you're
definitely
when your
can.
kids go to
Yeah.
when your kid goes to school.
Yep.
Are we going to order wallets? Oh God,
I'm not. No.
I'm not doing it.
I have 1,500 wallet photos on my phone right now.
Yeah. You know what it's called? 2021.
Yeah.
71% of the audience said no. I think they're interpreting that as most people aren't carrying them,
Yeah.
which is probably accurate.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of how the question was meant.
Did Steve not eating June Thanksgiving dinner ruin June Thanksgiving dinner?
I wonder which way this one's going to go.
80% of the audience said yes. You are that guy that is a thing. If everybody's sitting down for a meal and they're like, and one person is either, I'm just not hungry. Yeah. Or do you have the vegan option?
I brought my own legumes.
Yeah, you bring out a Ziploc of cold carrots. I've brought my own, and then you cut them with a knife and fork. The whole family staring at you, just offended.
I feel like my brother might have been exaggerating. I'm pretty sure I was able to blend in just fine.
I don't know. It seemed like there was uproarious laughter at the dinner table from your family towards you.
That is not out of the question. That has happened before, as we talked about last week with the 7 fishes. Mm-hmm. Oh, look at the idiot!
And it's still haunting you to this day.
He doesn't like fish. Yeah. Blah.
How do you mow your lawn? Options were vertical, diagonal, horizontal. Now this was rife for conversation in the comments.
Heated debates.
People very perturbed that we would imply that you don't. The thinking seems to be, and I have never done this, you're supposed to alternate between 4 options: horizontal, vertical, diagonal one way, diagonal the other way.
So you're supposed to go, because I would assume that that's how they do it on golf courses.
Right.
Just because everything there is so beautiful. They're obviously doing something right.
And boy, oh boy, I had no idea our audience took their lawn mowing so seriously, because all of these comments alternate, you amateur, rotate every time. So you and I are the only schlubs just going out there and plodding through it every day.
I do it the same way every time. Hold on. There was a brief interaction with somebody, I believe on Facebook, that I just laughed at because they sent, it was Andrew. Andrew on Facebook said, I do care about the long conversation, and screw you guys, and sent us this picture. Oh, come on, Andrew. It's horizontal. I don't know if it's coming up.
Oh, yeah, that's long form horizontal.
So I replied to him and said, ugh, gross. Sorry to hear you're poor, with 2 barf emojis.
That's right. We're equating socioeconomic status with the fashion that you mow your lawn. Well, Steve, third place, 25% of the vote, diagonal. So for all the snobs out there,
you're in the minority.
You're in the minority, and I want you to know that being in the minority means you're wrong.
Yeah.
33.8% say vertical.
Okay.
41.6%, Steve, are poor and mow horizontally.
Oh, God. We didn't include your method on there, the start from the outside and work your way in.
The box. I saw we had a comment regarding the square. Mm-hmm. My wife was actually mowing last night while I was edging and doing other things. She did diagonal. Felt her looking down on me the whole time.
I think next time I might try perimeter to nucleus.
Really?
Yeah.
It's kind of nice seeing seeing the area get smaller.
For me, it's satisfying because with every pass, that next lap is going to be shorter. It's like you're running a race around a track, but every lap, the track gets a little skinnier.
It's always you start with the most difficult. Mm-hmm. Make it easier as you go.
Yeah.
Did anyone care about our lawn mowing breakdown?
They better.
62% of the audience, Steve, said yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Very surprising.
Thank you. Can't be said enough.
That was it for polls last week. You can find those again, Facebook and Twitter at Steve and Kyle.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, we should mention again, because it was supposed to be happening in about 8 minutes. The Cure for the Cure.
Yeah.
Didn't happen today.
Oh,
unless you want to just
keep going,
keep rolling.
I mean, we've been doing it for an hour. We can
six more.
Yeah.
And then live stream it somehow while we're recording.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get that all set up. We got this new mixer. It does everything, right?
I promise this.
Hold on. Let me try.
The live stream button.
Let's see this button. Nope. It turns out that doesn't work.
You sure? Maybe you want to try another one?
Time to see how wrong everyone else. Time to see how wrong everyone else is.
Apparently.
It's time to see how wrong everyone else is.
Sounded pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate that.
We will make plans for that, whether it be around Labor Day or whatever, Steve and I need to talk about that, and we will plan something because people have given us money.
Yeah.
So now the responsibility has fallen upon us to actually do something to earn that money for the charity,
can we
not
just
for
send
us.
the money back?
Oh, yeah. You want to tell everybody? Tell us who sent us money. And
No,
then
I have a
mail-
note.
Oh,
I
you got a
kept
note.
it. Yeah, I kept a note. It says like $10, Bob. Cool.
Oh, so there's no room for misunderstanding.
Nope, none whatsoever.
So if you're named Bob and you happen to listen to us, good news in form of cash coming your way.
All right, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Steve and Kyle. You can check out this week's polls. Big thanks to Ben Kubrick. Check out the podcast Algorithm if you're into the true crime genre. Oh, man, I totally forgot to ask him about. I wanted to talk to him about the TV show Mindhunter.
Oh,
because
yes.
a lot of
Math in there.
Yeah, a lot of similarities because of the TV show Mindhunter about when the FBI was first developing the whole idea of a serial killer.
Yeah.
Because believe it or not, that wasn't that long ago that wasn't even a thing. I wanted to see what his thoughts on that were, but hopefully we can talk to him
Next time.
again. But yeah, his podcast Algorithm, it's 5 episodes in. They're about 40 minutes or so each.
Well worth your time.
Yeah, easy listens. Well, to some extent. Some of it is kind of difficult to listen to just because of the subject matter, but
Yeah, the easy listening, not content related.
yeah. So that's Tuesday episodes. So when you download us, download him as well.
Yep, please do.
We will talk to you next week. See ya.